Good evening, night owls. I'm Nova, your favorite nurse's favorite nurse, and I'd like to welcome you to Night Shift Story, where the comforting lull of a bedtime tale meets the chilling world of true crime. As we journey together through these pages, we'll uncover stories of those sworn to heal and those who've betrayed that sacred trust. Some tales are inspired by real events, twisted truths buried beneath medical charts and whispered in break rooms. Others are entirely fictional. Or are they? Viewer discretion is advised. These stories are not for the faint of heart. If you're ready, settle in. But don't get too comfortable. The night shift has just begun. Miriam Grant yanked her coat tighter around herself as she jogged through the dark parking lot. She hated being late. Still, she had managed to pull into the hospital lot with 2 minutes to spare until a coworker flagged her down to ask about trading shifts. By the time she reached the employee entrance and punched in, she was already 5 minutes behind schedule. As she rushed into the break room to grab her assignment sheet, Miriam's stomach sank. She scanned the paper twice, hoping it was a mistake. There it was, in bold black print next to her name. Unit, Hospice Palliative, the land of the forbidden. It was the nickname everyone in the hospital had given the ward. The floor was a mix of dying patients in their final hours and elderly residents with nowhere else to go. The long-term cases were heartbreaking. Some patients had been there for months, one for 3 years. The environment itself was another nightmare. Old, unreliable equipment, poor Wi-Fi, and a persistent chill that seemed to seep into your bones. Positioned directly beneath the GI lab, the nurses' lounge had been known to suffer from mysterious brown fluid leaks which made break times more unsettling than restful. "Are you okay, hun?" the charge nurse Sandra asked Miriam. Sandra's voice was cheery, but her eyes betrayed pity. No one liked floating to the forbidden floor. The staff turnover was constant. "I'll survive," Miriam said. "They're short again, I guess." "Same as usual." "Helen's there tonight, though. She's a pro. Been on that floor for years. She'll help you settle in." Miriam vaguely remembered Helen from staff meetings, always chipper and quick with a joke. The other nurses spoke highly of her, saying she had a calming effect on patients in their last moments. But there was something about her that Miriam couldn't quite place, something that didn't sit right. The elevator ride up felt endless. Miriam adjusted her scrubs and pulled her hair into a tighter bun, bracing herself for the night ahead. When the doors opened onto the floor, the temperature seemed to drop a few degrees. The lights were dim. At the nurse's station, a woman in white scrubs was writing in a chart. Miriam recognized her immediately. Helen. "You must be Miriam," Helen said, looking up with a warm smile. "Welcome to the team tonight. Don't worry, I'll take care of you." There was nothing overtly odd about Helen's words, but the way she said them sent a shiver down Miriam's spine. The nurse had the kind of smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, and for a moment Miriam felt like the one being sized up for care. As the night began, Miriam couldn't shake the sensation that something was off, not just about the ward, but about Helen herself. As she made her way past the nurse's station, she caught sight of a wooden plaque mounted on the wall. At its center was an old sepia-tone photograph of a man in a white coat with a handlebar mustache. A brass inscription read, "In honor of Dr. Trent Ottomine, visionary, innovator, healer. His dedication to end-of-life care has transformed lives." The name sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. Shrugging it off, she moved on, determined to get through her shift without incident. The assignment sheet clipped to her board listed her patients for the evening. Room 1, an elderly man recovering from a massive stroke, and Room 2, Miss Barbara Holcomb, the notorious long-term resident. Everyone knew about Miss Barbara, a feisty octogenarian who had outlasted staff turnover, countless policy changes, and most impressively, 3 years of bureaucratic limbo. Miriam knocked softly on Miss Barbara's door, half hoping the woman was asleep. No such luck. Come in," came the raspy voice. Miss Barbara sat upright in her recliner, knitting a misshapen scarf. Her room was crammed with trinkets and photographs, a small attempt to bring life to the otherwise sterile surroundings. "Fresh face, huh?" Miss Barbara said, squinting at Miriam. "They always send the new ones to us misfits. Don't worry, I don't bite." As Miriam set up to check vitals, Miss Barbara kept talking. Bet you saw the plaque for Dr. Ottoman out there, huh? Nice enough, fella. Helen's father, you know. Helen's father? Oh, yeah, Miss Barber continued. He was the big boss of this whole hospice program until they canned him a few years ago. Something about experimenting on patients. Creepy guy. Nice, but weird. Guess his daughter's just as strange. What do you mean by weird? Anyone who sings lullabies to the dying and climbs into bed with them is weird to me. But nobody seems to mind. Just be careful, honey. You might walk in one day and find her all cuddled up with one of your patients, humming some creepy lullaby like it's bedtime. Miriam finished her final checks on Miss Barbara and moved to her other patient. A frail man in room 1, Mr. Garrison. He lay motionless, his chest rising and falling in a shallow rhythm. His condition was grim but stable. No IV fluids, no medication scheduled, only comfort care measures ordered. She adjusted his blanket, ensured his oxygen cannula was secure, and made a mental note to fetch some warm blankets for his bed. As she worked, her mind wandered back to Miss Barbara's unsettling comment about Helen. She had already spotted Helen moving between rooms, but she hadn't yet had a direct interaction. Still, the one thought of anyone crawling into bed with patients was freaky. By the time dinner trays were collected, Miriam was running behind. She hurriedly entered Mr. Garrison's room to clear his untouched meal. As she lifted the tray, a flash of silver caught her eye. Wedged between a crumpled napkin was a used syringe. What the hell? Snapping on gloves to examine it more closely. The needle still had a few drops of liquid in it. Miriam's eyes darted to the patient. Still heavily sedated, his breathing slow but steady. A quick check of the patient's chart showed no recent orders for injections. No nurse had documented administering any IV medication earlier in the day. 1,000 questions raced through her mind. Why would there be a syringe in here? Who used it? And what was inside? Miriam's first instinct was to report it. But then she hesitated. Would anyone believe her? She was new to this floor, already treated as an outsider. What if this somehow led back to her being blamed? Stuffing the syringe into a specimen bag from her pocket, Miriam decided to keep quiet for now. She needed more information before taking this higher. She decided to watch Helen closely. Miriam stepped out of Mr. Garrison's room, still rattled by the syringe discovery, only to find Helen standing right at the doorway as if she'd been waiting. How's he doing? Did he finish his supper? No, he wasn't hungry, just resting. Well, let me know if you need any help with him. You're doing great, Miriam. Helen's questions about dinner felt oddly specific, especially considering what Miriam had found. It was as if Helen knew something and wanted to test her reaction. As soon as Miriam reached a stopping point in her task, she slipped into the locker room. She needed a quiet place to think and to examine the syringe more closely without Helen's sharp eyes on her. The locker room smelled faintly of antiseptic and old gym bags. Miriam pulled the syringe from the specimen bag she'd hidden in her scrub pocket. She turned it over in her hands, inspecting it closely. The liquid residue inside seemed harmless, but its presence in Mr. Garrison's room, where no IV medication was ordered, was anything but. As she stared at it, she drifted toward Helen's locker. It was slightly ajar, the lock dangling uselessly. Miriam knew she should walk away. Opening another nurse's locker was a clear violation of privacy and hospital policy. But something about the syringe and Helen's unsettling demeanor made her hands move on their own. Inside was a neatly folded jacket, but Miriam's eyes were immediately drawn to a beat-up leather journal sitting on top of a small pile of supplies. Next to it, she noticed several syringes, identical to the one she'd found, lined up in a meticulous row. She reached for the journal. As she lifted it, a yellow newspaper clipping slipped out and fluttered to the ground. She saw the headline, "Renowned Surgeon Trent Ottoman's Controversial Research Sparks Outrage." Miriam skimmed the article. It detailed Dr. Ottoman's experiments with near-death experiences, describing how patients under his care claimed to hear messages from the other side during revival attempts. The article mentioned his dismissal from the hospital after unapproved treatments on terminally ill patients came to light. Inside the journal, she found cryptic entries written in Helen's tidy script, referencing perfecting the transition and father's legacy. As she flipped through the pages, one of the last entries caught her eye. "We got a fresh one today." Was Helen talking about her? Could she already be a part of whatever twisted experiment Helen was conducting? Miriam's stomach churned as she pieced it together, instantly regretting the decision to eat 3-day-old pad thai for lunch. Her gut was rebelling against both the stale noodles and the horrifying realization that Helen wasn't just tampering with syringes. She was continuing her father's twisted legacy in secret, pushing patients toward the brink of death and using them as tools to pursue some dark, unthinkable purpose. Her heart raced as she slammed the locker shut, careful to return everything exactly as she had found it, making sure no one would know she had tampered with it. Miss Barbara had been right. Helen was indeed weird, but this was far beyond that. The calmness, the methodical nature, it was all a carefully orchestrated facade. Miriam sat on the toilet in the small bathroom, her head spinning. Her thoughts were a jumble of panic and disbelief. Helen was involved in something darker than Miriam had ever imagined, something that felt like it belonged in a twisted medical horror film. But who would believe her? She could hardly believe it herself. Everyone at the hospital adored Helen. She was the kind of nurse everyone trusted, the golden child of the unit. Even the most seasoned staff had a hard time seeing through her mask. Miriam squeezed her eyes shut, clenching her fist. She wasn't the kind of person who made a scene, who caused trouble, but she had to do something. As the sweat beaded on her forehead, she tried to steady herself. What's the worst that could happen? She knew it wasn't about the worst. It was about being right, about taking action. But what if she was wrong? This wasn't paranoia. Helen was playing a game, a deadly game, and Miriam was in the middle of it. Miriam snapped out of her thoughts as she heard the urgent commotion outside the bathroom. The hallway outside was full of nurses rushing by. Miriam quickly wiped her face with a paper towel and stepped out into the chaos. She could hear fragments of conversations, something about Mr. Garrison in room 1. As she entered, she saw Mr. Garrison surrounded by several nurses, his face flushed and struggling to breathe. "What's going on?" Miriam asked. Another nurse replied, "This is the 3rd time this week with him, and always around this time. His oxygen was disconnected. He stopped breathing, but we got him back for now." "No," Miriam interjected. "I just adjusted his nasal cannula before I left. It was on. It was working." Before anyone else could respond, Helen appeared at the door. She took charge of the situation immediately, positioning herself at Mr. Garrison's side and calmly taking his hand. Miriam's eyes narrowed as she noticed something. Helen had a syringe tucked into her pocket of her scrub pants. Helen's soft voice cut through the chaos as she began to sing a lullaby, a sweet, haunting tune. The room felt eerily still. The patient's roommate, who had been lying silently in his bed, suddenly joined in. It was as though this was part of the routine, a ritual. Miriam's head turned from Helen to Mr. Garrison, who was now breathing steadily, his body slackening into an unnatural calm. Helen finished singing, and the room seemed to breathe with her. The frantic energy that had filled the space moments ago was gone. Miriam could hardly believe what she was witnessing. Helen, now the calm center of the storm, turned toward the rest of the medical staff. "He'll be fine. Just a momentary lapse. Let's make sure everything is in place. I'll finish up here." Miriam wanted to shout, to accuse Helen right then and there, but the words caught in her throat. She could hardly keep her composure as Helen took Mr. Garrison's hand and offered him another smile. Miriam couldn't take her eyes away from the syringe, still hanging from Helen's pocket. She knew she had to follow her. Miriam pushed forward, catching up to her just as she reached the bedroom door. "Hey, Helen, is something wrong, Miriam?" "I know it was you," she said. "What did you do to Mr. Garrison?" "We were so close, Miriam." The transition was nearly perfect this time. "You're a psycho. You almost killed him." "No, Miriam. I'm helping him. Helping us. Helping you. You wouldn't understand, but you will in time." Miriam could see the syringe clearly, still hanging from Helen's pocket. "I see it. I'm telling the charge nurse. This ends now." "No, Miriam, you won't tell anyone. And you know why?" Miriam took a step forward, ready to fight. "Because Mr. Garrison is your patient, Miriam. You're the one who was in his room. The syringe is in your pocket right now. The oxygen was off after you left, and I came in and saved the day, just like I always do. And don't forget, my father donates so much money to this place, no one will bat an eye. Without his donations, this unit would be shut down. No one will question me, Miriam, not after all the good I've done here. You think anyone will believe you over me? I'm the one they trust. I'm the one they love. You're just a small fish in this pond, and we've won already, Miriam. The legacy must continue. Miriam rushed to the charge nurse's office, her palms sweating as she knocked on the door. When the charge nurse, Nurse Andrews, opened the door, Miriam stepped in without a word. She sat the syringe on the desk, explained the tampered IVs, the journal, and Helen's disturbing beliefs. Nurse Andrews didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned back in her chair, exhaling slowly. You're a fresh one, huh? I was too once. I spoke up about the things I saw, just like you, and they came after me. You think they'll listen to you? I've been here long enough to know how it works. You'll be ostracized. You'll be labeled as trouble, and they'll make sure you're the one at fault. They'll bury you, Miriam. This is serious. You don't get it, do you? This isn't about the truth. It's about survival. You don't have the power to fight them, not with the resources they have. I didn't either. They came from my family. My son. He's sick, Miriam. He needs treatment. Without this job, I can't afford it. I couldn't risk losing it. Helen? She knew about this? Yes, she found out and she used it. She targeted me, used my son's illness against me. She's been playing us all from the start. The power and influence Helen's father had, not just over the hospital, but over their lives, was becoming clearer with each passing moment. No matter how hard Miriam tried, this system had been set up long before she arrived, and it would continue long after she was gone. Nurse Andrews leaned forward and gathered the evidence into a pile. You won't be able to take this anywhere. You're alone in this, Miriam. She was trapped. The shift was nearing its end, and as Miriam made her way out of the hospital, Helen was lying in a patient's bed, her arms wrapped around a frail, elderly woman as she softly sang a lullaby, watching in horror as the woman's eyes fluttered shut, her breathing slowing. Miriam slipped Helen's journal into her book bag and ran quickly down the hall to the elevator to go home. The odds were stacked against her, and this nightmare was far from over as Helen's voice drifted through the quiet halls. As you shut your eyes to a distant inn, your work is not done. True life begins again. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the shadows of the land of the forbidden. I'm Nova, reminding you that the night holds many secrets, and we've only just begun to uncover them. Meet me here next time as we work through the night shift together. Until then, sleep well.